r/Nosleep. Posted by you/thebyersconspiracy. My roommate is a haunted doll. Part 1. So for a few months now, I've been sharing my house with a doll that I'm now fairly sure is possessed. It's not actually as bad as it sounds, though. I mean, we all have our crazy roommate horror stories, the one who never flushed the toilet, the one who blasted loud music at night, the one who was always bringing home dates and left the sink full of dirty dishes. This honestly isn't much different. Cohabitation is never easy. Having a haunted doll as a roommate poses similar issues, albeit of the more paranormal kind. For the most part, they're just minor quirks, technology glitching, weird messages on the walls, dead animals, etc. Sure, the animal corpses and blood showing up in strange places is a little worrying, but I'm pretty sure cat owners go through the same thing, so I shouldn't complain. Not that I'm comparing the doll to a pet. I don't think it would be pleased by the comparison. After all, it does help pay rent. I think. I keep finding wads of cash stuffed in my freezer when rent day comes around, and if it isn't the doll doing it, then I have no idea where it's coming from. Whatever the cause, I'm not complaining. The doll is also an excellent security system against burglars. The other night, someone broke into my house and started ransacking the place. Apparently, the doll didn't appreciate the intrusion, because by the time the police got here, the would-be thief was cowering in the corner. I'm not sure exactly what happened before they arrived because I wasn't home at the time, but I'm told that the burglar will make a full recovery eventually. The official story is that he pulled out his own fingernails and chunks of his hair due to some sort of mental breakdown, all by himself, because the officers couldn't find evidence of anyone else being in the house at the time, and he kept babbling about demons. I'm getting ahead of myself, though. I should probably start at the beginning. It began when I put up posters around the community college I attend, looking for a roommate to help pay for the house I'd recently moved into. There were no replies to the ad until a few days later, when a sharp knock at the door startled me from my computer. Well, I say knock, but it was more like a single heavy bang, as if someone had thrown their full weight against the door. However, the only sign that someone had been there once I opened it was a crusty-looking doll, placed right on top of a torn piece of paper, one of the ads for a roommate that I had pinned up at the school. Obviously, I thought it was a prank. The thought of someone making fun of me for my financial issues pissed me off, and so I called out into the empty street, "Joke's on you, asshole. I've always wanted a creepy doll. You ain't getting this back." Out of sheer spite, I actually did keep the doll, naming it Shit Waffle and placing it in my living room for all to see. Yes, I know the name is stupid, but in my defense, I didn't know it was hosting an otherworldly entity. Actually, I didn't notice anything was off about it for a surprisingly long time. One of my friends told me it gave them a weird feeling, but I laughed it off as being part of that weird phobia most people have of inanimate humanoid objects. Like, yeah, mannequins and whatever are unsettling, but they aren't actually alive. Or, at least, that's what I thought. I should probably detail some of the events that led to my conclusion that Shit Waffle was haunted. I think that the first really odd thing I remember is when I was doing a deep clean of the house. I was in a bit of a bad mood because I had to do it all by myself. No one had responded to my roommate posters, and the ads I put on Craigslist kept getting mysteriously deleted, and so I had the radio on full blast while I worked. Rap music, the classics, obviously, not any of that new shit, helps me focus while I stress clean. So anyway, I was scrubbing the shower with all the fury of Wu-Tang Clan when suddenly the radio started crackling and making static. I cursed, but figured something had gone wrong with the reception or something, and so I kept cleaning. That's when the radio started switching from channel to channel, a sliding line punctuated by fragments of voices and song. Now, I don't know shit about radios, but that seemed unusual to me, so I got up and readjusted the knob with an uneasy look around the room. Nobody was in the house but me, and I didn't think someone had really snuck inside just to switch the radio. All the same, I couldn't help feeling on edge. I glanced at the doll sitting on the counter, and asked it, half-jokingly, "Hey, Shit Waffle, you didn't see anyone come in here, did you?" No response, just a dead-eyed glare. "Yeah, didn't think so," I chuckled nervously to myself. I went back to cleaning, finishing up the bathroom and getting out of broom. It wasn't until 5 minutes later, while I struggled to get that little corner of dust into the pan, that I realized the music playing was some sort of jazz. What the fuck? I ran back to the radio and checked the station. As I suspected, it had changed without me noticing this time. It happened several more times throughout the day, until I finally got so frustrated that I turned the radio off completely. I would have written it off as one of those funny little things that just happen from time to time, if not for what happened later that night. Blow your horn with a bebop kick, make new sounds, don't miss a trick. I actually fell out of bed in my rush to turn the extremely loud song off. It sounds silly, but one of the most terrifying feelings has got to be a sudden blast of music in the dead quiet of night. My heart was racing as I leaned against the counter, finally having switched the radio back off. Instead of being a relief, the silence actually seemed ominous. Darkness transformed the familiar kitchen into a menagerie of unidentifiable shapes. I stumbled toward the light switch to turn it on, telling myself it was because I needed to see, not because I was irrationally scared. As the hum of harsh fluorescent lights flooded the room, Shit Waffle, who had been resting against the radio in the dark, turned its head towards me. Its speedy eyes seemed accusing, as if saying, "You turned off my music, fuckwad." I'd rather not write down what the rest of the night was like. Suffice to say that I flipped out, and there was no more paranormal activity. In the morning, I convinced myself that it was a nightmare, or a trick of the light, and felt embarrassed by my overreaction. Still, despite my denial, a certain wariness had developed in my interactions with the doll. I found myself more hesitant to pick it up and move it around. Not that this hindered Shit Waffle in the least, the damn thing still managed to appear in places I was sure I hadn't put it. I feigned ignorance, but it became so blatant that I could ignore it no longer. The turning point was definitely when, one day, the doll popped up right behind me, startling me so bad that I reflexively punted it down the hall with a swift kick. Shit Waffle arced through the air, gown fluttering, and then smashed into the far wall with a sickening clatter. My stomach turned, and I felt inexplicably guilty. It wasn't really my fault the thing snuck up on me, for fuck's sake, but I still felt the need to check that it hadn't broken. Before I could even take a step forward, the walls began to shake and rattle. Pictures fell onto the ground. Glass shattered. At the end of the hall, Shit Waffle stared me down beneath the flickering lights. Somehow, I managed to calm the doll down by apologizing and playing some of the jazz music it seemed to like, and which was actually starting to grow on me. What can I say? It's catchy. After that, it was impossible to ignore the fact that my creepy little housemate was some sort of real, sentient supernatural being. This is usually the part in the story where the cursed individual seeks out help from an exorcist or paranormal professional. I did not do that. I mean, in my defense, Shit Waffle is a pretty decent roommate. Throwing it out just because it's a bit haunted would be kind of a dick move, especially since it hasn't done anything to actually harm me. We're definitely not friends, and I get the feeling it's just tolerating my existence, but the same could be said for many other roommates I've had. Plus, I'm too lazy to try and find a real exorcist. Yes, I know I could probably find some banishing ritual on the internet, but it would be pretty awkward if Shit Waffle found out I was researching how to destroy its soul or whatever. I'm sure that the doll knows how to use my computer because I keep noticing weird search histories like cemeteries near me and what sound pitch drives dogs crazy. Man, I wish I had the time to tell more of my experiences. I know that what I've written so far could be dismissed as coincidences or a runaway imagination, but I promise there's been more substantial evidence. I thought I'd start out with some of the more tame things that happened, because jumping right into the glowing orbs and demonic late-night rituals would be a lot all at once. Unfortunately, I didn't realize that detailing the beginnings would take so long, and now I'm kind of in a rush because of finals and the end of the semester. So I've decided that I'm just going to post this, and continue filling everyone in after I've finished with that stressful mess. In the meantime, any advice on what to do would be appreciated. Am I crazy for being chill with a haunted doll in my house? Also, I don't actually know that much about paranormal lore, aside from a few horror movies, so if anyone knows exactly what is going on, hit me up. Is it a ghost? Demon? Whatever Shit Waffle actually is, I guess it's safe to assume that housing is difficult to find for supernatural beings too. I can sympathize with that. My roommate is a haunted doll. Part 2. Now that finals are over, I have time to write down some more of my experiences living with the haunted doll I have dubbed Shit Waffle. A lot of people had suggestions as to how to handle this situation, which I appreciate. Since my first post, I actually did purchase a Ouija board, as recommended, Hasbro brand, which is never not going to be hilarious to me. I'll get to everything that's happened since last week, but before that I figured I'd share some more of the stories I didn't manage to finish. Let it be noted that, again, I won't be able to get to everything in this post. I've learned my lesson from last time, Starting off, I should probably address the demonic rituals I mentioned. These usually happen late at night. I've never actually witnessed one, but while I'm laying in bed I can hear the chanting and shuffling movement from the living room. Because I am an unrepentant coward, I never get up to see what's going on, just put in my headphones or go back to sleep. Afterwards, there's always a lingering smell of smoke and sulfur, but otherwise no mess, so I guess I can't complain if Shitwaffle wants to have its demonic friends over for a gathering. Of course, the first time it happened was terrifying. I woke up at about 3 a.m. in the pitch black of my room, and heard a cacophony of voices growling right outside my door. My body froze up with fear. It was a horrible sensation. You'd think that hearing intruders banging around my house at night would propel me to leap up and defend myself with a frenzied desperation, but something about lying prone in the dark gives a false sense of fragile security. I was convinced that if I so much as twitched, the outsiders would know immediately and descend upon me with a fury. Irrationally, I thought that the only thing that could keep me safe was to stay in that vulnerable position. The worst part was the voices. I don't know if you've ever seen those videos of dogs or cats making almost human-sounding words, contorting their vocal cords into sounds that people consider cute imitations, but that's the closest thing I can think of. Except their baseline seemed to be more along the lines of the deep, guttural crackles of crocodiles. So, I guess imagine a crocodile trying to imitate a human voice, and you've got a pretty good idea of what I was hearing through the walls while I was curled up all alone in my room. Needless to say, I don't find dogs saying "I love you" very cute anymore. It wasn't until the next morning that I could consider the whole situation without a haze of panic clouding my mind. I knew that Shitwaffle would never allow intruders in the house. It also made sense that my roommate would want to invite companions over. I mean, sharing a house is great and all, but it doesn't really fulfill the need to have real social interactions. So I put my fear aside as best as I can. I've even managed to gather up the courage to bang on the wall and call out, "Keep it down, I'm trying to sleep," when they get too rowdy out there. Miraculously, they actually do quiet down when I ask. That doesn't make the whole experience any less unsettling, but I appreciate their consideration. The orb phenomenon is much less intense by comparison. They're just these glowing, floating orbs that appear around the house sometimes and wander around. I don't know if it's more house guests, or some sort of manifestation of Shitwaffle's soul, but they are quite useful at night when I get up to fill a glass of water in the middle of the night and can't find the light switch. The orb's glow illuminates just enough so that I don't stub my toe on the counter while I walk. I always make sure to give Shitwaffle a big thumbs up when I'm following the orb to the kitchen or bathroom at night, to show my gratitude. Shitwaffle never replies, except with a sardonic stare. I get the feeling that I'm amusing to it. One of my friends was over once when the doll was orbing. It was daytime, so the orb wasn't as bright, but she was still pretty impressed. She's always believed in ghosts, and excitedly informed me that usually they have some sort of unfinished business that ties them to this realm. I vaguely remember something like that in a movie I watched once, so I guess it could be legit. Later that day, after she left, I tried to have a sit-down with Shitwaffle to talk about what it wanted from me, exactly. "Hey, Shitwaffle," I began. "How are you?" The doll sitting on the couch opposite me said nothing. Cool, I continued awkwardly, "So, hey, is there any way I can help you?" The doll stared at me. "I mean, do you need some sort of closure?" I clarified, feeling stupid. "Do you need help completing some unfinished business, to, pass on to the other side?" At that, Shitwaffle finally turned its head to face me, seeming extremely offended. "Well shit, no need to give me that look," I exclaimed. "I was just trying to have a conversation. Look, if you don't need to find inner peace or whatever, that's chill. Less work for me. Just thought I'd offer, in case you wanted help. We don't really talk at all and I figured I'd check in." This seemed to pacify Shitwaffle, whose body went slack again, into the state I'd come to call relaxed indifference. Deciding I could use some relaxed indifference myself, I plopped myself onto the cushion next to the doll. "Wanna watch some TV?" I asked. In response, the television switched itself on with a sudden hum. Channels flicked by automatically in a mess of static, finally stopping on a nature documentary. I thought it was pretty cool that Shitwaffle didn't even need to use a remote. I wish I could do that. We spent the rest of the evening watching gory footage of lions eating zebras in an almost companionable silence. I'd like to say that we grew closer together as a result. However, the next day, when I tripped on the carpet and fell flat on my face while getting ready for class, Shitwaffle just giggled hysterically. So the doll is officially still a little bastard. I'd love to complain more about the things Shitwaffle has done, but if I don't stop here then this will end up way too long, and I still have to get to the events of the past week. The most important development was probably the Ouija board. I bought one for cheap over the weekend to communicate with Shitwaffle, because communication between housemates is important. The instructions said that more than one person was required to operate the board, so I invited some friends over to try it out. You know your friends are cool when they'll willingly come over to help you commune with the spirit inhabiting your creepy doll through Ouija board on short notice. One even brought snacks, which was awesome. Only Peter didn't show up, but I don't really blame him for being freaked out by the whole thing. Most of my friends experienced weird stuff involving Shitwaffle, so they knew I wasn't making shit up. Unfortunately, this made people a lot less eager to come and hang out at my place. Which is fine. We have lots of fun at the bar downtown at my friends' places. My point is, it's been a while since I had so many people over. It was weird but good to have the house filled with my friends joking and shenanigans again. That's what I like about them, even in somewhat serious situations, they can make it into something fun. Anyway, we were all sitting down around the Ouija board, and it was time to begin. We went through all the steps with Shitwaffle watching us from its place of honor on the table. Once that was done, we greeted the spirit and asked its true name, like the instructions told us to do. Nothing happened. We tried again, and Juan started to get nervous, saying that he felt like the doll was displeased with us. Still, we asked a third time. The planchette nearly slipped from under our sweaty fingers as it spelled out. The group shared an uneasy little laugh. One of us, I can't remember who, said, jokingly, "Wow, after all the trouble we went through to set up this party for you, and you won't even speak to us? Rude." Evidently, this pissed Shitwaffle off, because the planchette moved again. Even more forcefully this time. A few people yelped as their arms were yanked along. Stupid. All of us, sensing the anger at our attempts to bother the doll, grew silent. Except Lucy, whose favorite hobby is evidently poking hornets' nests. She replied, snidely, "Oh, so that's your true name. Nice to meet you, stupid." Before any of the rest of us could process what was happening, the planchette indignantly zoomed straight to the no in the corner of the board, and then down to the letter U. "No, you?" Lucy cackled wildly. "Oh my god, what are you, 5?" I glared at her and told her to be nice, but she was rolling on the floor, in tears. The rest of my friends were either mortified or cracking smiles. In the commotion, the doll had disappeared. I found Shitwaffle later, after everyone had left, sulking in a closet. Now, I don't really know what was going on with the Ouija board. Maybe my friends really were so aggravating to the taciturn doll that it reverted to calling us childish names out of frustration. Or maybe Shitwaffle's real name started with a U, but wasn't finished because of Lucy's distraction. Another possibility is that Lucy was the one controlling the planchette. It does seem like something she would do. The alternative is that Shitwaffle goes around calling people stupid, which I don't know what to think about. That kind of ruins the mystique of an otherworldly being. So, all in all, the Ouija board was a massive failure. I'm not too disappointed, though. Because honestly I hadn't put too much hope in getting answers from something manufactured by Hasbro. Finally, I should probably address people's concerns about the name Shitwaffle. It might be a bit vulgar, but I don't get the sense that the doll really cares. It comes off as aloof, like couldn't care less what petty mortals might call it. Of course, if the message on the Ouija board was actually from the doll, then maybe that detachment isn't as complete as it wants us to think. I guess we'll find out more as I continue to update my observations of my eccentric roommate. My roommate is a haunted doll. Part 3. I'd like to apologize in advance if my writing seems a little distracted today. I'm currently trying to keep a haunted doll from stalking my plumber. If you haven't read the first 2 posts I made, then that sentence probably caused you to doubt my sanity. I promise that it makes a lot more sense with context. Or at least, as much sense as my life can make anymore. Ever since I became roommates with a possessed doll, normality has taken a new meaning. An average day for me now includes a lot more glowing orbs and disembodied screams than it did before I posted that ad for a roommate. So I think that it's perfectly reasonable to assume that I've lost a little bit of my sanity among all this. The fact that I named the doll Shitwaffle probably doesn't help my case. Moving on. The plumber is in my bathroom, fixing my toilet, which has been refusing to flush for the past few days. Usually, I'd be suspicious of my roommate, because I'm always careful about what I flush down there, unlike a lot of people I've lived with. Trust me, those are not the kind of horror stories you want to hear. However, I don't think Shitwaffle is capable of actually taking a dump. You know, what with not having an anus, and all that. I mean, I haven't exactly checked, but I think that's a safe bet, right? Oh god, if Shitwaffle can shit. I think that would be the most disturbing thing out of it all, and that includes the demonic rituals. I'm tempted to ask out of morbid curiosity, because Shitwaffle is sitting right across from me. Somehow, though, I don't think that would go over well. And I'd really rather not have the plumber frightened away before he finishes fixing my toilet. It's a miracle that I managed to get the plumber into the house without anything supernatural happening. Shitwaffle doesn't like visitors very much, especially when they start messing around with things. That's why I'm keeping a very strict eye on the doll while the plumber works. I actually started off with doing nothing but watch Shitwaffle to make sure no mischief was perpetrated. But that got boring quick. There's no winning a staring contest with a being that has glass eyes. So I decided to write to pass the time, since until now I've been pretty busy with the holidays coming up. I mean, I don't really celebrate much. I'm planning on just going to a few parties with some friends, but I work retail, and it is crazy this time of year. But I digress. I should start recounting some more of Shitwaffle's antics instead of rambling on about plumbing and work. Something interesting I've noticed is that our neighbor's dog absolutely loathes Shitwaffle. The Saint Bernard alternates between frightened whining and wild barking whenever she's walked past our house. The feeling appears to be mutual, because Shitwaffle deliberately goes out of its way to aggravate the dog. Sometimes it's as simple as positioning itself in the window whenever the dog is put in the backyard to stare at her eerily. Sometimes it's more elaborate. Once I spotted the doll teasing the poor thing by causing her food bowl to burst into flames whenever she tried to eat from it. The yelps of surprise were pretty sad to hear at first, but as the dog was tricked again and again, it just got annoying. Seriously, if your food spontaneously combusts, stop trying to eat it. My neighbor is convinced that someone is trying to prank her. She often complains to me about the damn kids these days who she believes are bullying her dog. Every time, I just force a sympathetic smile, nod, and grab my mail so I can hurry back inside. I mean, what am I supposed to say? Yeah, sorry, it's my evil haunted doll who enjoys watching your dog suffer? Okay, maybe evil is too strong of a word. But Shitwaffle is most definitely a passive-aggressive asshole. Just the other night, I stepped out of the shower, ready to brush my teeth and head to bed. The steam from the hot water hung in the air pleasantly, clouding the bathroom mirror with tiny droplets of condensation. I took a moment to breathe it all in. There's something very relaxing about that quiet post-shower sensation, I remember thinking to myself, brushing my teeth contentedly. Drips from the shower head echoed through the tiled room. This isn't an ominous silence at all, I thought optimistically. This is a calm, happy silence. It's nice to have one of those for once. As I bent forward to spit out the toothpaste into the sink, fate proved me wrong. All the warm air was suddenly sucked from the room, sending chills down my skin like an electric shock. Fuck, that's cold. I yelped, jumping up. That's when I noticed the writing on the mirror, traced on the foggy glass. Too thin to have been drawn by any human hand, and definitely not there a moment before. I shivered. Rinse, the writing ordered. I looked down into the sink. The foamy toothpaste was still stuck to the ceramic sides, desperately attempting to dribble down towards the drain. Shitwaffle, you micromanaging motherfucker. I screeched in frustration. I was getting to that. Fuck. Furiously, I splashed some water into the sink, and not because a doll told me to. I always rinse out my spit. Well, most of the time. Sometimes. Nobody's perfect, okay? Anyway, why would a doll care? It doesn't use the sink. Forgetting the cold air, I stomped out of the bathroom in search of my roommate and nothing but my ratty old towel. Shitwaffle was perched nonchalantly on my bookshelf, next to an open copy of 20th Century Dolls, From Bisque to Vinyl. The fuck did you think you were pulling back there? I raged, adjusting my towel with all the dignity I could manage. Freezing me to death is no way to communicate your needs, I fussed. Wait, where'd that book come from? I pride myself in knowing every single book in my house. You probably wouldn't guess it from looking at me, but I love to read. I spent a large part of my childhood exploring the public library. But this was no compendium of Shakespeare, no battered copy of Maya Angelou's poems. Not even the Magic Fucking Treehouse. It was a picture book of vintage dolls, and I'd never seen it before in my life. Later, I wondered about how a haunted doll would purchase something at a store. Do they toddle up to the counter, money clenched in one tiny fist, towards an aghast cashier? Maybe, I pondered late at night, They have to steal books. That makes more sense. Images of dolls in tiny catsuits, lowering themselves from ceilings to snatch books from counters, still flash through my mind when I space out. But at that moment, the only thing that came to my mind was, "Is that like porn for you?" Shitwaffle blinked calmly and then turned back to reading the book. "Hold on, we still have to talk about the whole mirror thing," I remembered, shaking my head to get rid of the distracting thoughts and dripping water from my hair. Shitwaffle looked at me, unimpressed. "Okay, so I leave the sink messy. I admit to that. But you kind of overreacted with the whole spooky ghost message and cold air thing. You don't need to pull stunts like that to get my attention. I can't promise that I'll always be a perfect housemate, but I can promise that I'll always try to listen. You can talk to me about this kind of stuff." The doll seemed surprised at my earnest words, and glanced up and down at me as if seeing me for the first time. Hope bloomed in my chest. This might be the start of real communication between us. We'd never really connected like this before, like two people sharing a space instead of just happening to live in it at the same time. Or Shitwaffle could be checking out me in all my wet towel glory. "By the way," I asked, now curious, "why do you care so much about the sink being clean?" A porcelain arm raised to point at my towel. At first, I thought that was just proof that it was ignoring everything I was saying to stare at my ridiculous attire. Then it hit me. "You take baths in the sink?" The doll's head wobbled in an approximation of a human nod. "That's fucking adorable," I blurted out. Shitwaffle glared at me. "I'll make sure to clean out the sink from now on. And if I put a tiny hand towel next to it each night, well, that's my business." Speaking of bathrooms, the plumber actually seems to be in distress right now. I keep hearing splashes and shocked gasps from the next room over. But Shitwaffle is still sitting across from me, so I don't see how it could be. Oh fuck, the plumber just ran out of the bathroom like a bat out of hell. I'd better go check on him. Okay, real quick update. Don't have time to write down what just happened over the last hour, but it was definitely Shitwaffle's fault. It's going to take a while to get rid of all of the bones and slime. Ugh. I'll explain next week. My roommate is a haunted doll. Part 4. Alright, so I know I promised to explain what happened with the plumber and I will. I'll get to that. But first I need to let off some steam about a more recent incident, because, well, it ended up with me burying my roommate in the empty lot behind my local Denny's. I know that sounds bad, but listen. When you're living with a haunted doll named Shitwaffle as a roommate, there are bound to be rough patches in the relationship. Our issue started in the first few hours of the new year. I'd been out at a party all night, and a friend of mine drove me home because I was pretty drunk. I waved goodbye as I struggled with the keys, not wanting them to see me fail at opening a door for 10 minutes. It actually took closer to 15 minutes for the lock to finally click. In my defense, my fingers were all but frozen in the chilly not quite morning air. I could have definitely gotten it in, like, 8 minutes if it hadn't been so cold out. The door swung open and I stumbled into my dark living room, reaching for the flashlight app on my phone because I didn't want to grope the walls trying to find the light switch. Suddenly, the lamp in the far corner turned on, illuminating a figure posed on the couch. My heart leapt to my throat before I remembered, oh yeah, I have a roommate. "Hey, buddy," I greeted the doll, who had managed to position itself in the most disapproving way possible. There was an uncanny resemblance to a parent who had just caught their child sneaking in after curfew. "Are you judging me?" I snorted. "You can't judge me, you're a lil doll. You're a cute lil doll. My doll roommate." I giggled at the absurdity of it all. Shitwaffle was holding something. "What's that you got there?" I began to ask. And then I realized exactly what the possessed doll had in its little hands. I froze in place, not daring to move. What are you doing, bud?" I laughed nervously, a droplet of sweat trickling down my neck. Precariously held above my couch was an open bottle of maple syrup. Hey now, be careful with that. That stuff would take forever to clean out of the couch if it spilled." My voice grew slightly hysterical with fear. I couldn't go through this again. Not after the plumbing incident and all the rigorous cleaning involved. Shitwaffle threw me a challenging look with its beady little eyes, and tilted the bottle slightly so that a single bead of dark orange liquid formed on the rim of the container. "You monster," I whispered hoarsely. "I should have known you were evil. I should have." The bottle tipped further, causing sticky droplets to slowly hit the fabric, one after the other. I staggered forward slightly, letting out a pained noise. "No, please. No more. Stop, I'm begging you. Stop." I'll do anything, just don't get any more of that shit on the couch." The doll paused, considering my desperate face. For a moment, I hoped I'd gotten through to it. Then, the silence was suddenly shattered by the sound of obnoxious quacking coming from my phone. I cursed the stupid ringtone and answered the call, not breaking eye contact with Shitwaffle. It was my friend Peter, still sounding slightly drunk and wanting to know if I was still at the party. "No, I'm at home," I replied slowly, still staring at the bottle of maple syrup. Peter must have heard the barely restrained fear in my voice, because he suddenly sounded a lot more sober. "Are you alright?" he asked, concerned. "There's a situation that I'm trying to deal with. Can I call you back later?" "Oh, fuck. Is it that doll? I told you to get rid of that creepy thing." Upon hearing that, Shitwaffle's little face twisted into a mask of rage and I knew that my couch was fucked. I dropped the phone and dove towards the doll anyway, hoping to minimize the damage done. Unfortunately, my skill at catching baseballs was not enough to prevent the syrup from spilling over half of the cushions. Something inside me broke. I let out a wordless screech of anguish. The maple syrup was already sinking deep into the old couch that I'd owned for years. The same couch that I made pillow forts with as a child. The couch that had been there for me throughout every house move. The couch that I had always taken for granted. I don't think that Shitwaffle was expecting me to lunge at it with such ferocity. In fact, I'm pretty sure that element of surprise was the only reason I managed to get the better of the supernatural being and stuff it into the cardboard box that I'd kept meaning to throw out but never actually got around to. It could have been considered an impressive defeat of such a powerful creature, if I wasn't a full-grown adult against a doll with tiny porcelain hands. Also, I was sobbing tears of outrage, which probably made the scene look even more ridiculous. I can't imagine what the people at the Denny's must have thought as they watched me march up to the empty lot next to the diner at 4 in the morning and begin to dig into the frozen earth. Every so often, I had to pause shoveling dirt to drag back the cardboard box which was trying to inch away. I caught a lot of customers staring at me through the window, pancakes drooping off half-raised forks as they followed my progress with confusion. I hadn't counted on there being so many witnesses. I mean, how many people would be at a Denny's in the early morning of New Year's Day? The answer is a lot. Enough people that it was actually really sad. Of course, I was burying a cursed doll in the early morning of New Year's Day, so it's not like I can judge. When I finally returned home, my muscles were burning from the intense effort of digging and my head was aching from a developing hangover combined with my complete lack of sleep. Shitwaffle was waiting in front of the house, covered in dirt and looking very grumpy. "Fuck," I sighed, walking up to the doll and unlocking the door. "I'm too tired to deal with this shit. Whatever. Come on inside, you little fucker." Shitwaffle smugly levitated into the air and sped into the depths of the house. Somehow, we just returned to our regular, relatively, peaceful dynamic after that. I guess screaming at and burying my roommate alive was pretty cathartic for me. As for Shitwaffle, well, after it got over being annoyed with me, it seemed to think the whole incident was funny. We actually get along better now. It's like we finally accepted each other as roommates. The two of us even found a song that both of us enjoy, Biggie Smalls featuring Thomas the Train Engine, which is a fucking hilarious mashup of Biggie's rapping over the Thomas the Train theme song. That doesn't mean I've completely forgiven Shitwaffle for the whole plumber debacle, though. I'll try to summarize. Basically, I had to follow the freaked out plumber and calm him down enough for him to actually explain what had upset him so much. This is what Meow the plumber told me. He had determined that the problem was likely something clogging the toilet. Earlier, when he entered the house, he'd heard a giggle and seen a doll, and so assumed that a child lived here and must have tried to flush a toy down the drain. Apparently, this happens a lot because kids like to watch their toys drown in the flood of water. Kids scare me. Anyway, Meow couldn't actually see the object, so he snaked an auger down into the toilet hole, and it snagged something. Relieved that the job had been so easy and a little annoyed to be called out for something so minor, the plumber pulled out what he assumed to be the source of the problem. And then he stared. At first glance, it looked like a grayish slimy blob. Gross, but not that unusual. Except, the viscous material seemed to be twitching with a life of its own, pulsating with its own delicate nervous system. At a closer glance, Meow could see tiny veins in the semi-opaque lump. Meow was rightfully unnerved by the strange thing. He'd never seen anything like it in his entire life, not even in those science magazines with photos of weird creatures from the deep. He took a deep breath. He told himself he was overreacting, that just because he didn't recognize it didn't mean that it wasn't a perfectly natural thing. He told himself to just get the job done and stop thinking about it. The toilet still wouldn't flush, so again the auger went in. He could definitely feel something down there. It took some more effort, but the plumber finally pulled out another, larger blob. This one was more substantial. It was still a gross chunk, like every color of Jell-O mashed together into a gray amalgam, but firmer. What was most upsetting was the tiny, beating organ inside it, connected to fine threads that stuck out of the goop, as if torn away from a larger mass. Was this some kind of creature? Some kind of living meat? Mihaw's heart sped up, and for the first time he wondered if the house owner might have been involved, trying to get rid of some horrible genetic experiment. Then the man shook his head. No, that was ridiculous. He'd watched one too many episodes of Star Trek with his daughter last night. That was it. And so Mihaw, despite his fear, continued to clear the toilet of the mysterious clog. Oddly, as the pile of gray organisms removed became larger and larger, the plumber began to imagine that the outlet of the toilet released into a much wider space than it should have. More and more of the blobs had bones inside of them, and again Mihaw wondered about their origin. Images of a serial killer flushing down still pulsing human body parts, which would then rot to a disgusting gray mush in the water but never die. Mihaw had a very active imagination. The scared plumber shone his flashlight down the drain. A yellow eyeball on a thin, gooey eye stalk stared out from the darkness. Mihaw stared back. Then came the horrible noise. A rushing, growling sound that grew in intensity that caused him to flee for his life. I'm pretty sure that last sound was just the toilet flushing, but I wasn't about to say that to the poor guy. After I convinced him I wasn't a serial killer or mad scientist, and had no idea what the fuck that gray shit was, he calmed down a lot. We discussed it rationally, and decided that the best thing to do would be to go back inside and take another look. We stepped inside the bathroom, and gasped. The tiled walls were covered in gray slime, except for the clear path of the words traced into the goo and shit waffles now familiar handwriting. The portal has been closed. Wow, you were right, I told Mihaw. That is really gross. Mihaw stammered, unable to speak, and I took pity on him. Well, it seems like everything has been fixed, I said, stepping over to the toilet and watching it flush perfectly. So, what do I owe you? I don't think Mihaw will ever want to work on my plumbing again. Oh well. Guess I'll have to find a new, non-traumatized plumber. In Shit Waffle's defense, I don't think the toilet portal was a scare tactic. Maybe it was something one of its demon friends left behind. Or maybe haunted dolls have some really weird hygiene issues. Anyway, that's what happened over the past week or so. I'll update again soon. Also, in the meantime, I'd really appreciate any advice on how to clean maple syrup off of a couch, and what to do with a bucket of gray fleshy organisms. My roommate is a haunted doll. Part 5. I am happy to announce that all traces of maple syrup have been removed from my couch, and a childproof lock has been added to my fridge. If Shit Waffle wants to get its little doll hands on any of my food, it's going to be very disappointed. As suggested, I went to purchase a pet stain vacuum to get rid of the sticky substance. And then I saw the price, so I borrowed my neighbor's instead. Surprisingly, she didn't ask why I needed a pet stain vacuum, despite knowing that I have no pets. Now that I think about it, she probably assumed it was some crazy college kid mess and just didn't want to know the details. That would explain why she seemed so disapproving. Oh well. She can gossip about me all she wants, as long as she doesn't figure out that it's my haunted doll who's been driving her dog crazy. Interestingly, someone commented on one of my posts to point out that I'd previously mentioned Shit Waffle leaving odd search histories on my computer, including research into the sound pitches that only dogs can hear, which now makes a surprising amount of sense. I'm really glad I decided to share my experiences with you all. I've often been accused of being oblivious, so it's nice to have other people who can make connections that I would have otherwise overlooked. I mean, yeah, I have my friends, but they're pretty weirded out by Shit Waffle, and don't really enjoy hearing about the exploits of my unusual roommate. Thankfully, the internet has an above-average tolerance for freaky shenanigans. So, thanks for being such good listeners, random strangers on the internet. This is a lot cheaper than a therapist, and you have my gratitude. But you know who doesn't have my gratitude? Peter. Yes, my friend Peter, who thought it would be a great idea to show up to my house unannounced with a psychic in tow. Now, don't get me wrong. I have nothing against psychics. This one was a very nice older lady who reminded me a bit of my great-aunt, and in any other circumstance it would have been lovely to meet her. However, I'd just gotten off a long day at work, and just slipped into my ratty sweatpants, you know, the kind you only wear when you plan on not having any human contact for the rest of the day. I just wanted to sink into my slightly maple syrup smelling couch, watch TV, and eat microwaved food. But apparently, Peter was worried about me because of the possessed doll living in my house. Which is ridiculous. Shitwaffle and I are chill. I tried to explain this to the two of them as they stepped into my house, but the psychic, Denise, wasn't listening. She was standing stock still. "I sense an overwhelming rage coming from the living room," she murmured, her glasses flashing dramatically in the low light. Peter glanced at me, wide-eyed, as if to say I knew it. I think he expected me to be impressed or intimidated or something, but it was hard to take any of it seriously because I knew that Shitwaffle was only pissed because they'd interrupted Animal Planet. "You should probably leave," I suggested reasonably. "The sooner my guests left, the sooner Shitwaffle and I could go back to watching television and lazing around." "Don't worry, my child. Its negative energy cannot harm me." Denise tried to reassure me, completely misinterpreting my meaning. "No, that's not what I Look, I appreciate that you came to check on me," I lied. "But has the entity ever tried to harm you?" Denise interrupted, still in a low, cautious voice. "Nope," I answered at a normal volume, because all of this whispering nonsense was stupid. "You broke your ankle the first week you got that thing," hissed Peter. "And what about all those weird bruises?" I groaned in exasperation. "Okay, first of all, please don't bring up the shampoo incident, because it's embarrassing and had nothing to do with Shitwaffle. And secondly," I continued, "if you're claiming that you don't ever get unexplainable bruises, then you're straight up lying, because that shit happens to everyone. What about that burglar who was hospitalized because of that crazy doll? You can't dismiss that." Peter Whisper shouted. "You bet your ass I can dismiss that. The motherfucker was trying to break into our house." "Our house?" Peter repeated incredulously. "Shitwaffle is an excellent roommate," I said defensively. "All of our friends are too scared to come over since the Ouija board session," Peter deadpanned. "Shitwaffle is an acceptable roommate," I amended. "You contacted the spirit with a Ouija board?" Denise asked suddenly, concern furrowing her brow. "That's extremely risky. This may be even worse than I thought." Before I could inform her that Ouija boards are actually produced by Hasbro, and therefore do not scare me any more than a Power Ranger action figure, she walked into the next room. Peter and I followed, only to see her reaching out to pick up the doll on the couch. "Don't touch it," I yelped. The psychic paused. "But I need to get a reading," she explained slowly, as if immediately manhandling someone upon entering a room was a perfectly acceptable thing to do. Damn, is there anything more aggravating than an uninvited guest who walks around your house like they own the place? Shitwaffle apparently doesn't think so, because it let out an ear-piercing screech, its head spinning around wildly. Peter looked like he was about ready to piss his pants. Denise took a cautious step back, which was probably a smart move. Never underestimate a potential Peter pants pissing. Or maybe she was startled by the doll screaming its head off. That could also have been a reason. "Yeah, I get it, buddy," I sympathized with the irritated doll. "I don't know why I let these screwballs in, either." The screwballs in question looked at me with surprise and betrayal at my commiserating comment. Like they weren't expecting me to be on casual terms with my roommate of the past few months. Which, you know, is a little insulting, because I am perfectly capable of getting along with people. That thing. It isn't a human spirit. Don't you understand? It isn't. It isn't Casper the Friendly Ghost. It's a demon possessing a vessel. Denise explained, urgency leaking into her voice. I have to admit, I wasn't expecting a pop culture reference from someone who looked like she was fresh out of a hippie commune. Sure, Casper is a bit dated, but it's the thought that counts, right? I had to give her points for that one. The middle-aged woman continued to speak, her bangles clinking like little alarms as she gestured towards Shitwaffle. The demon is not of this world. Its sole purpose is to feed on your life force to bring ruination into the lives of humans. It feels no remorse, no regret. It brings only suffering with it. Yeah, but it pays the rent, I shrugged. Denise looked mortified at my apathetic millennial attitude. I sighed and tried to explain. Look, you may have been able to afford a house back in the day, but the cost of living is expensive as hell now, no pun intended, and sometimes a person's got no choice but to room with a literal demon. And, all things considered, I've had worse roommates. Peter sputtered, but it's evil. You can't possibly. Shut up, Peter, I groaned, rubbing my forehead absently. A headache was starting to form, And I had a pretty good guess at the cause. Just, please leave. I'm really tired and we want to be alone right now. Peter began to protest, but Denise pulled him back gently. It's too late, Peter. Your friend is already under its demonic influence. There's nothing we can do now. For fuck's sake. Was it really so hard for this lady to accept our economy's current housing crisis that she needed to accuse me of being mind-controlled by a haunted doll? Well, at least it got them to leave. The doll was a little cranky afterwards, making all sorts of blood-curdling screams, but we finally managed to settle down and watch an interesting documentary about some kind of funky worm called a green-banded broodsack. So the evening wasn't entirely wasted by pointless dramatics. In other news, a commenter suggested that we use a letterboard to communicate, and I thought that was a fantastic idea. I've used whiteboards and chore charts with other roommates before, but I didn't think it would really work with Shitwaffle because, well, I'm not sure if it can even pick up a whiteboard marker with those tiny hands, let alone write legibly with one. I'm not sure if the doll's fingers have joints or not, although once I did think I saw it flip me off. But with the letterboard, the letters can just be picked up and shifted around to create messages. I'm still trying to decide whether it would be cheaper to buy a traditional letterboard or just get those little alphabet magnets for the fridge. I'd appreciate any thoughts you all might have on that. Either way, I'm extremely relieved to have found an efficient way to talk with the little guy. I was embarrassingly close to buying Christmas lights and stringing them up over the alphabet like in that one show with the girl who eats waffles. This way will be a lot easier on my electricity bill than that, thankfully. I'm going to end this post a little early, as I'm still kind of in a bad mood from the psychic's visit. I mean, mind control? Under the demon's influence? Seriously? I think I'd know if I were being possessed. My roommate is a haunted doll. Part 6. Shockingly, nothing extremely disastrous has happened since I last wrote about Shitwaffle, the possessed doll living in my house. While I'm thankful for the peace and quiet when I can get it, I realize that it's probably not very interesting to my readers. Hopefully I'll be able to appease you all with some stories of minor supernatural shenanigans. Don't worry. I'm sure the other shoe will drop soon, because my life is a chaotic tornado centered around a literal demon. Anyway, I decided to buy those little alphabet magnets for the fridge. I think they'll be really helpful for communicating with the possibly evil spirit inhabiting my home. Plus, it'll really bring down the horror element to this whole thing. The time for blood is soon will be a lot less threatening when written in colorful, childlike letters. Or it might make it 10 times worse. Oh well. I already bought them, so it's too late now. Because I'm too lazy to drive back to the store. Speaking of laziness, the magnets haven't quite made it onto the fridge yet. I keep meaning to put them up, but since classes started again I've been pretty distracted. Yay, college. But I promise I'll put them up soon so I can talk to the doll. I almost managed to do it yesterday. But then my Chinese delivery came and I had to get to the door before Shitwaffle. Shockingly, delivery guys don't react well to a possessed doll running at them full speed down the hallway. And since I prefer food which has not been dropped on the ground, I always try my best to answer the door first. This is a real turnaround from my previous attitude, which was to annoy my roommates into getting the door so I wouldn't have to. Of course, that isn't a feasible option anymore, what with the nature of my current roommate and all. So now I'm much quicker whenever the doorbell rings. In fact, while my friends and I were chilling at one's apartment, they never want to come over to my place. For some reason, there was a knock on the door. I reacted instantly, vaulting over one's non-maple syrup smelling couch and answering the door before anyone could move. Everyone was shocked by my sudden eagerness, since usually I'm the last person to do anything without prompting. Lucy found it especially hilarious, remarking that I sprung up and darted out of the room like a startled rabbit. In my defense, I forgot that I wasn't in my own house. I've gotten into the habit of attempting to spare any visitors from Shitwaffle's very special form of greeting. Don't even get me started on that time with the Jehovah's Witnesses. I've asked the doll to tone it down, but it doesn't seem to listen. Apparently, scaring the shit out of guests is a lot more fun than behaving like a fucking adult. Then again, if I had paranormal powers, the number one thing I would use them for would definitely be to mess around with people. So I can't get that upset about it without being a huge hypocrite. Maybe Shitwaffle will pay more attention if I write it out in fridge magnets. I've been brainstorming possible messages to convey. It hasn't been easy to come up with opening statements. I mean, I'm starting an actual conversation with a demon. I can't exactly begin with "So you like jazz, dude?" One commenter suggested that I ask about hell. Now, I'll admit I am burning with curiosity, pun intended, about the eye-opening secrets that could be told about metaphysical realms. There are so many philosophical questions, unanswered for centuries, that I could unlock for the first time in human history. On the other hand, it seems a bit rude to ask such personal questions of shitwaffle. Like, what if it's sensitive about its time in the hot place downstairs? And how do you even lead up to such a serious topic? So I'm gonna put those deep existential questions on hold until I manage to figure out how to get a porcelain doll drunk. I figure that the least awkward way to bring up the topic is if we're both extremely inebriated. And hey, if any of you have ideas about what to talk to shitwaffle about once the alphabet magnets are set up, feel free to let me know in the comments. I'm drawing a blank, so anything is appreciated. Speaking of which, another commenter recommended a horror movie for shitwaffle and I to watch together. I was curious and bored, so I went ahead and rented it. Huge mistake. I'm not usually scared by horror movies, but whenever there was a scene with suspense or intense fear, my demonic roommate thought it would be hilarious to startle me. It started out subtly, so that I didn't suspect the doll at first. Occasional creaks of the door behind us and a quiet moment and flickering lights, just enough to make my heart jump for a second before dismissing it as nothing. But as the film progressed, so did the level of supernatural occurrences. It all came to a head when shitwaffle caused the radio to blast out static during a tense, quiet scene, causing me to shriek and fall off the sofa. And it didn't stop after we finished the movie. I was on edge for the rest of the evening, and shitwaffle took full advantage of it until I became so annoyed that I just went to bed early. And I never want to know how all those spiders ended up in the chips bag. Needless to say, we will not be having another horror movie night again. The little bastard can hang out with its demon friends instead. Demon friends that will not, by the way, be opening my refrigerator anymore, because of my handy child-proof lock. You see, the lock on the fridge wasn't just to prevent another maple syrup incident. I started to notice that after those midnight demonic rituals, the ones with the unearthly howling that I wrote about before, I'd wake up to find food missing from the kitchen. I knew shitwaffle couldn't be the culprit because dolls can't eat, or, at least, I hope they don't. Can you imagine a doll with human teeth? And the food only ever disappeared after a wild night of monstrous guests. I tried to ask shitwaffle to tell its friends not to touch my food, but the doll simply shrugged in a surprisingly helpless manner. I guess parties spiral out of the host's control in every reality. Weirdly enough, the stuff that they took was always the ketchup and any citrus fruits that I happened to have around. I have no idea why. Do the demons chug the ketchup straight out of the bottle? Or do they squirt it on the lemons first? I shudder to imagine the unholy things the demons must do with those two very incompatible ingredients under the cover of night. But like I said, that won't be happening under my roof anymore. Because I have a childproof lock. My plan is infallible. Am I underestimating the intelligence of demons? Maybe. But then again, maybe not. I've only ever met one of my roommate's friends before, but it did not seem to be very bright. This encounter actually happened a few weeks ago, but I didn't include it before because there were more important things going on. Now that there's a lull in the chaos, I might as well tell the story of seeing one of shitwaffle's companions face to face. It all began when I got a text towards the end of my shift at work. One of my friends had driven past my house and decided to drop off his old textbook, because those things are expensive as fuck and he'd already passed the class. He assumed I was home because he could see a figure moving behind the curtains, so he walked up to the door and raised a fist to knock. Then he remembered that I was at work. And now that he was close enough to the house, he could hear manic cackling emanating from inside. I'm not sure what happened afterward, because he wouldn't tell me the details. Probably because they were embarrassing. All I know is that I got a ton of frantic text messages blowing up my phone, saying there was something in my house. I wasn't too concerned. I figured it was just shitwaffle. Still, as soon as my shift ended, I headed straight home. Just in case. As I walked inside, the first thing I noticed was that the house was a mess. Posters were torn down. Furniture was overturned. Clothes were being flung out of my room. The fuck is going on here? I demanded, rightfully pissed off. The thing that emerged from the wall was not shitwaffle. It looked like, well, for lack of a better term, it looked like a ghost. But it did not resemble a human who happened to be see-through. It was more of a grotesque caricature with a parody of a human face. Bulbous yellow eyes squeezed out from slimy skin, as if they were too overgrown zits ready to pop. The mouth was impossibly wide and filled with rotting teeth that clattered unpleasantly as the entity laughed and zoomed around my living room. I also spotted shitwaffle on the couch, seemingly very embarrassed by the rowdy conduct of its guest. Seriously? This is who you hang out with? I'd hoped that shit waffle had better taste. The doll resignedly sent out a pulse of darkness which vibrated through my bones. The poltergeist paused its havoc, regarding its fellow spirit. Leave? But we're having so much fun. It replied to the wordless command with a wet sneeze of a voice. Fun's over. Get out, I said flatly, and was ignored in favor of dumping an entire bag of pretzels on the rug. I sighed, marched into the kitchen, and returned with a broom. A wide grin stretched across the mischief maker's face. It seemed to think that I was going to sweep up the mess, only for it to scatter everything again with gleeful malignance. Apparently, it had never been chased out of a house with a broom before. Out, motherfucker. Whack. Shoo. Whack. Get whack. Out. I'd never tried to remove an intangible being from my house before, but the broom method tends to work on any creature, whether it's a bat, raccoon or in this case an aggravating spirit. The trick to this is that you're not supposed to actually hit the intruding animal. If you smack the walls close to it and wave the bushy end threateningly, that's usually enough to frighten the thing outside. So, despite the fact that the poltergeist consisted of ectoplasm, the old tried and true tactic of my grandmother worked like a charm. Once it was gone, I made shit waffle clean up the house. And I only had to wave my broom a few times for motivation. Okay, here's the last thing I have for you all today. Thanks to some commenters, I've decided to order some more clothes for the possessed doll. The internet, as it turns out, is a vast and bountiful place for finding doll clothes. For some reason, it was so hard to resist the urge to buy a tiny clown suit and afro. I'll update with shit waffle's reaction to the clothes I actually did buy when they arrive. Finally, I'd like to apologize again for the relatively unexciting post. I'm sure my life will be back to its usual insanity soon. My roommate is a haunted doll. Part 7. I've been getting a lot of questions about what exactly the possessed doll that decided to live in my house actually looks like. That's fair, and I hope that you all haven't been imagining it as a Barbie or troll doll or inflatable sex doll due to my previous lack of physical description. No, shit waffle is your average, run-of-the-mill haunted doll. It's the kind that one might see at the estate sale of a creepy stranger, or shoved in the back of a dusty old antique store. I think it's made of porcelain or ceramic, but I'm no expert. Whatever material goes clink but doesn't break when you accidentally punt it against a wall for sneaking up on you. The most defining feature of my unusual roommate are the intense green eyes that stare out of an otherwise childlike face. They seem out of place above the rosy, chubby cheeks and button nose. Whoever designed the doll must have never seen a real human kid in person before, and assumed they look like babies with the eyes of a traumatized war veteran. Wearing mascara. Not the most comforting thing to wake up to staring at you in the middle of the night, especially combined with that strange mouth. I'm trying to find the words to describe the mouth, but it's hard to pinpoint exactly what makes it so unnerving. At first glance, the lips just look pursed and somewhat disapproving, not unusual for a pretty little doll. But if you look closer, there's somehow the suggestion of the mouth being unnaturally wider. Something in the curvature of that plump face seems to indicate that if the doll actually unhinged its jaw, it would keep stretching back until it resembled a yawning alligator. Or maybe I'm just being silly and imagining things. I do have a tendency to overanalyze. That brings me to the gender of my roommate. Over the past few months, I have agonized over whether it is supposed to be a girl or a boy. The face is just so androgynous, and the body, as far as I can tell, not having peeked under the little nightgown it arrived in because I respect boundaries, shows no clues. My roommate is a haunted doll, quarantine edition. Ever since a possessed doll showed up on my doorstep and began to haunt my house, I've learned quite a few things about fear. Everything from blood-curdling howling outside my bedroom door at midnight, to the sudden chilling realization that one is being watched. I thought all of these experiences would have prepared me for anything. But this coronavirus shit is somehow scarier than living with an actual demon. At least with shit waffle, and yes, I named the evil doll shit waffle. If you didn't know this already, then you should probably read the first 7 posts I made about it. Anyway, at least with shit waffle there's the knowledge that if I get killed, which is unlikely, since I think we're pretty chill nowadays, that the world will go on. Even after I'm dead, people will still walk down the streets. Friends will still drink at bars and tell hilarious stories and laugh together. Customers will still demand to see the manager about things the employees have literally no control over, like the color of a dress. Call me crazy, but it's kind of comforting to me to know this. The world won't stop just because I do. Not that I have a death wish, there's a ton of stuff I still want to do on this earth, but I'm pretty zen about my own fragile mortality. That's why seeing empty sidewalks in the usually bustling downtown scares me. I know, logically, that the world won't actually end even if we do go into a zombie apocalypse scenario. Grass will still grow and clouds will still drift across the sky and the planet will continue to turn. But it's still terrifying. Change is terrifying. We might return to our normal lives after this pandemic dies down, but things will be different. Wow, I'm getting kind of morbid. All this isolation gives me way too much time to overthink things. Also, way too much time to rewatch old movies over and over again. Who knew a crisis could be so goddamn boring and scary at the same time? Orson Welles once said, "There are only two emotions on a plane, boredom and terror." I think that's applicable in this situation. Except in this case, it's sitting on your couch, bored out of your mind, with sudden intermittent bouts of stress because how the fuck are you going to pay your mortgage when you can't even go into your job anymore? And then once you wear yourself out worrying about all that, it's back to lounging around, nothing to do and nowhere to go. I'm sure I don't have to tell you all how frustrating it is, since we're all experiencing it together. Fortunately, for me, I've got a roommate who is very distracting. Whenever I start to fall into a depression, something in the house will suddenly catch on fire or levitate. I'm not sure if Shitwaffle does this on purpose to get me out of my slump, or if it's just as bored as I am. But either way, I'm grateful. Well, not exactly grateful that I spent a whole weekend scrubbing soot off the walls, but you get the idea. There's not a lot to do around here anyway. I mean, I actually started doing arts and crafts because I was so restless. Arts and crafts. Not something I ever imagined myself doing after kindergarten, but it's actually kind of fun. Sadly, I don't have a lot of art supplies, so some improvisation is necessary. Most of my creations come out looking like the kind of dumpster art you see in front of lone gas stations in the middle of a long road trip. Still, I'm kind of proud of the stuff I create. Sure, maybe it's made of cut-up old pajama pants or empty glass bottles, but hey, it's something I made all by myself. Shitwaffle does not seem to feel the same way about my endeavors into the world of art. After spending hours trying to figure out how to sew a little face mask for my doll friend, it repaid my hard work with heartless destruction. Okay, maybe it was made from old socks, and maybe dolls don't actually need face masks. But finding my sewing project torn to shreds, as if eaten from the inside out, only an hour after putting it on Shitwaffle's face, was a bit disheartening. And also terrifying. That thing was a mangled mess by the time the doll was done with it. There are some creative things we enjoy doing together, though. A few weeks ago, in a fit of boredom, I dug out some of my old jigsaw puzzles from the depths of my closet and set one out on the coffee table to work on in my spare time. My grandma bought me a ton of them when I was a kid, and not those lame child-friendly puzzles. No, me and grandma worked on the badass 1,000+ piece sets, whole undersea adventures and sprawling flower gardens with ponds and terraces. Anyway, a few days and I noticed that parts would be completed that I didn't remember working on. Not much, at first, just a few puzzle pieces here and there. Then it became bigger, a whole school of fish fit together one day, an entire dolphin the next. I didn't think much of it until I walked in on Shitwaffle sitting on the coffee table one day, back turned to me and humming a little tune under its breath. I froze in the doorway, heart in my throat, terrified that the possessed doll was maliciously disassembling the jigsaw I had spent hours on. And then I realized that it was putting pieces together, not taking them apart. I admit that I gasped happily and clapped my hands together in sheer delight. Finally, another puzzle lover. Shitwaffle whipped around at the noise and seemed extremely embarrassed to be caught doing something so normal, but relaxed as I gushed about having a puzzle partner and regaled it with stories of my grandmother. Ever since then, we always have a jigsaw puzzle set out in various states of jumbled near completion. It's actually been a lot of fun. Except for the time that Shitwaffle got mad at me for some reason and hid the final piece so that I couldn't finish the one we'd been working on. It drove me crazy, not being able to find that last piece, the almost perfect picture mocking me with its single hole every time I walked through the living room. I didn't even suspect the doll, and wasted a lot of time searching between couch cushions and worrying that I'd accidentally vacuumed it up. Finally, Shitwaffle had mercy on me and returned the missing puzzle piece. My fury and relief surely must have been a sight to behold. Another activity we've done together since this whole self-isolation business began is playing cards. You'd think it would be hard with an opponent whose fingers are stuck together and whose poker face is literally immovable. And you'd be right. It's really fucking difficult. But that just makes it all the more satisfying to beat. Although I will confess that I did rage quit once, after picking up and moving the cards for Shitwaffle an entire game only for the smug little bastard to levitate the final card, a 4 of clubs, in one winning move. I was so pissed that the evil doll had made me think it couldn't hold the cards itself that I refused to play for the rest of the day. Sometimes I'm afraid that with my only companion in quarantine being a chaotic demon is going to end up with me losing my mind. I miss the days when I could go out and talk to regular human beings, even the homeless dude by the Home Depot who liked to tell me about the lizard people controlling our government. I hope he's doing okay in this pandemic. He's actually a pretty chill guy. When I think back to a month or so ago, it seems like another lifetime. Having someone knock on my door and speak face to face with me seems inconceivable now, even though it's only been a few weeks since the last Jehovah's Witness came by. Of course, the reason they've stopped coming might have also been because of Shitwaffle. The man who stopped by last time got quite a fright. I might as well tell the whole story, since I have nothing better to do other than reminisce about when people were allowed within 6 feet of each other. It started out as a fairly standard interaction. He knocked on the door, I dragged myself off the couch, and he pretended not to notice my ridiculous pajamas as he told me about the good news. I wasn't really paying attention, and prepared to make my excuses so I could go back to eating cereal out of a coffee mug. My bowls were dirty and I was too lazy to wash them. Of course, that's when Shitwaffle decided to cause some mischief. The Jehovah's Witness twitched nervously when the first bang resounded from the back of the house. Then another sounded, closer this time. I got a bad feeling that Shitwaffle was up to no good, and attempted to convince the man to leave, but he was rooted to the spot. His fingers grew white from clutching his Bible so hard as the loud banging became faster and faster, closer and closer, coming to a crescendo. The final door in the hallway slammed open to reveal the little ceramic doll with its dead eyes speedily crawling on the ceiling like a giant, pale spider, directly towards us. Understandably, the Jehovah's Witness shrieked at the top of his lungs, reflexively flung the Bible with full force at the demonic creature, and sprinted away down the street as fast as his feet could carry him. The heavy book didn't manage to hit my roommate, who had dropped gracefully to the floor and was looking quite pleased with itself. Yeah, laugh it up, I rolled my eyes, annoyed but not surprised by the doll's prank on the unsuspecting visitor. Get in a good chuckle. At the end of the day, you still look like a constipated baby. That wiped the smirk off my roommate's face. My gaze fell on the Bible left on the ground, splayed open to a random page from its unsuccessful tour as a ballistic weapon. Figuring that the Jehovah's Witness wasn't coming back for it anytime soon, I shrugged and put it on a bookshelf. I actually forgot about it until recently, while sifting through my collection for something to read during the shelter-in-place order my state has put us under. It caught my eye and I figured I'd give the holy book a shot, since I've never actually read it before. I'm hoping for some insight into demons, what with my living situation and all, but so far I've only gotten through Genesis and all I've found is an uncomfortable amount of stories about incest. Like, there's this one about this guy named Abraham. At one point he goes to live in a foreign country. The king comes by and spots Abraham's wife and is like, "Who's that? She's sexy," and Abraham thinks to himself, "Oh shit, if the king finds out she's my wife, he'll have me killed so he can marry her." So Abraham tells the king she's his sister. The king, thinking she's a hot single in his area, takes her to his castle. But that night, God comes to the king and says, "You fucked up, bro. You're going after a married woman. Now I'm gonna fuck you up." Frightened, the king rushes to Abraham and asks, "Why the hell did you lie to me about Sarah being your sister? Now God's gonna fuck my shit up because of you." And Abraham replies, "Haha, nah bro, I didn't lie. She is my sister. And my wife. Not my fault you didn't think of that." The king is like, "Oh, okay. My bad. Here, have all this silver and land and livestock and shit. Please tell God not to fuck me up real bad." And everyone lived happily ever after. The end. So yeah, the Bible's pretty weird. Does it get better? Let me know if you guys think it's worth finishing. Not that I'm implying that the church is a 1,000-year-old book club that exists solely to recommend books to me. Anyway, I'm not sure if I should even keep the book in the house in the first place. Shitwaffle really doesn't seem to like it. When I started reading the Bible, the doll disappeared for several days. It didn't leave the house, I could tell, because the bumping and scraping sounds inside the walls couldn't have come from anything but Shitwaffle, as all living creatures shun my house nowadays. Not that I'm complaining. Free pest control, and all that. Although it would have been nice to have some warning the first time I found a decapitated head of a raccoon on my porch. You know, looking back, sometimes I think Shitwaffle may have been trying to actually frighten me in the early days of our cohabitation. I feel kind of bad that I didn't notice. But I'm glad we get along now. Just the other night, after I tucked myself into bed, all comfortable and ready to sleep, I realized I'd forgotten to turn off the lights. I really didn't want to get out of bed, so I called out, "Hey Shitwaffle, can you turn off the lights?" Amazingly, my roommate actually listened. Sure, all the power cut off from my house for the next 12 hours, but it got the job done. Really warms my heart to know that deep down, Shitwaffle does care. Okay, so I was about to post this when something else came up and I figured I'd include it, so sit back down because boy do I have a story to tell. You know how in all those movies, ghosts need to complete some unfinished business to move on to the next plane or whatever? Well, I just saw that shit firsthand. Before you panic, no, it wasn't Shitwaffle. Shitwaffle is perfectly fine and still causing chaos in my house. In fact, I'm not even sure Shitwaffle is a real ghost of a dead human. It seems more like a demon or something to me. Anyway, I was at the DMV yesterday. I won't bore you with the details of why I was there, suffice to say that it was the usual dull reasons, nothing exciting. Now, if you've ever been to a DMV, you'll know what I'm talking about when I say that all DMVs have a bizarre aura to them. Time moves slower. The air tastes different, an improbable mixture of stale and energized. Flashing numbers hypnotize until words lose all meaning. I firmly believe that the Department of Motor Vehicles exists outside our reality in a strange pocket dimension of its own. Once, I ran into two of my exes while waiting in line at the DMV. I hadn't seen either in years and we didn't even live in the same area anymore, so it was a bit of a surprise to see them, especially both at once. We caught up, but it was kind of awkward, so one of them decided to relieve the tension by showing us YouTube videos so we wouldn't have to really talk to each other while stuck in line. The videos were really strange and I didn't understand them at all, although that might have been because of the dissociative effect of the DMV. From what I remember, they were about an unidentifiable creature who spoke in soft rhymes that gave the whole video a bizarre, dreamlike quality. When I'd finally left the cursed hole in reality known as the DMV, I realized that 5 hours had passed. That was a weird day. But I'm getting off track. The point is that the Department of Motor Vehicles is a strange place, even under normal circumstances. Amidst the pandemic, it's even stranger. Instead of reducing the weird effect inside the building, the lack of crowds of people jostling each other caused the large room to become even eerier. On the day I went, it was like a ghost town. Pun intended. For some god-awful reason, despite being the only person in line, I still had to do a lot of waiting. While bureaucratic things beyond my mortal comprehension happened behind desks, I decided to use the bathroom, just in case. I've never actually been to a bathroom in a DMV before. The fear of losing my place in line was always too great, and once the paperwork is done I always wanted to get out of there as soon as possible. Anyway, I was listening to the sound of my piss echoing in the empty bathroom and wondering if it was always that loud when suddenly the fluorescent lights overhead flickered and went out. I panicked, imagining that the department was closing and the employees would accidentally lock me in here. One of my worst fears when I noticed a familiar greenish glow emanating from underneath one of the stalls. Oh, thank fuck, I breathed a sigh of relief, no longer rushing to zip up my fly. It's just a ghost. With Shitwaffle as my roommate, I've had a few encounters with ghosts before, but I'd never met one outside of the parties thrown by the haunted doll. I wasn't sure what to do, especially when a low moan came from the glowing bathroom stall. The sound conveyed such pain and misery that I felt it in my gut. "Do you need some toilet paper?" I asked, being very familiar with the agony of an empty roll and no toilet paper in reach. "No. I need to go," was the response. "Ah, constipation," I nodded sympathetically, idly washing my hands. "That's the worst, man." This wretched person probably died while desperately needing to go to the bathroom, holding it all in until their final breath. That was their unfinished business to do their business. To take a shit. But then it hit me. Ghosts can't poop. The tortured soul in a bathroom stall would never have closure because it's physically impossible for an intangible being to release its non-existent bowels. The thought of a painful eternity holding in a shit made me shudder. I solemnly vowed to myself that I would ease the spirit's discomfort. "I'm coming in," I warned, "but don't worry, my eyes are closed," I quickly added, not wanting to see ghostly junk or invade the other's privacy. With all my might, I kicked the stall door open and fumbled around until I found the toilet handle and yanked it down hard. I waited for the echoing flush to die down before I dared to open my eyes again. The only glow left was that of the exit sign above the door. Flushing the toilet had worked. The symbolic act of flushing the toilet had relieved the phantom's psychosomatic desire to take a dump. Later I realized I may have only flushed the ghost down into the sewers, but by then I was already home and there wasn't anything I could do about it. Shit Waffle, of course, found this hilarious. Oh well. I did my best, and I think that's what really matters in the end.